today I'm going to do things a little bit differently, which I think I end up saying every week almost. Something happens or something comes to mind and make me do something different. Today we have our internet issue, so I wasn't able to get a hold of the things I needed to get, but so I pulled them up on my phone, and hopefully all will work right and I can read it at a distance and navigate through things on my iPhone here to get through the sermon. But I also realized that I spend a lot of time speaking from here, and that's as much about my security as it is anything else. Not that I'm afraid of anybody throwing things at me, but that I just feel better having something to hold on to. But today I'm going to kind of come down a little bit and actually just sit right there, because I want to just maybe have a chat, I guess, in a way, rather than a speech or a sermon of sorts. And although I hope it feels like a conversation, try not to chime in at the wrong points or anything, but it's been kind of a rough 2 weeks for me, and I just need to have a talk about some things. Recently, in the last 2 weeks, I've lost 2 good friends for different reasons. One, as you know, already lost a battle with cancer, and last Thursday, another friend of mine from college had a lot of series of events happen in his life that on Thursday morning led him to take his own life. And it was a shock to many of us who knew him, but as we discover things, we see the path that sometimes we can get on and it's hard to get off. And for him, I'm guessing he just didn't ever see a way out of things that had happened in his life. And many of us wish we could have known or somehow been there for him. Both of them leave behind children and lots of family members. And even this past week, our community lost Jody Brown, who many of us knew, who was 44 years old and on his way riding his motorcycle died in an accident. I didn't know Jody well, but he was always nice to me and a very genuine and authentic person in who he was. And he also leaves behind children and a family. And so I ask that we keep all of them in prayer, and others you may know who have lost loved ones recently, as several of us have experienced. It is always a tough thing to deal with the loss of someone, but as a dear friend of mine said, as we were sharing some drinks, memorializing a friend in Fort Belvoir on Friday, that he said, "I've accepted my own death, but I haven't accepted the death of everyone else's." And I find that to be true for me, and I'm sure for many of you as well, that it is the pain of loss, of losing someone and knowing that their influence on this world might be gone for a little while but remains with us, that hurts us more than anything else, including our own passing. But I would like to start with something a little fun today. One of the most inspirational speakers I've ever known, out of Philadelphia, a guy by the name of Rocky Balboa, which I hope you know of. If you don't know of Rocky Balboa, just leave your money in the plate and we'll talk later. Maybe we won't. Well, you are still invited back, but you need to watch Rocky before you come back. Skip, is it ready? Okay, so I want you to listen to some of the good words from Rocky here, which I think reflect what Jesus is talking to us about as well today.
But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
There you go. The world according to Rocky, and many men we've known, and women as well. I've heard lots of women give that same inspirational speech. The reason I thought of that actually. As many of you know, I coach soccer, or help to coach the girls' soccer team out of Pine Grove. And work under Jason Brown, who people here are related to and know. And the varsity girls' soccer team is now, I believe, 17-0. And I expect on Wednesday they'll turn into 18-0. Next Saturday will be rough again, but it looks like that'll be 19-0. And they play that at the beginning of every game before they warm up. They play that and the whole stadium hears it, and then it gets into some other Muhammad Ali quote, and I think I'm an M maybe, or somebody who you may not know, and then music turns to things I don't understand. But it motivates them, and they play the same thing every game. Same music, gets them pumped up, and it works. And I think if we change that, it would throw things off of them. It's their persistent way of knowing what motivates them and gets them fired up. Now, in all honesty, they're the most talented group of soccer players I've ever worked with. And I've worked with some pretty talented ones before. Their biggest fault is that they're so talented that sometimes they realize or they think that their win's just going to come to them. And when they're challenged, you see it knock them down a little bit. You can see it in their spirits. And Jason has a good way of getting them to reorganize around halftime and realize what's going wrong and to fight harder and to realize that things aren't handed to you just because you're good. And they obviously win games. There's a real chance they may bring home a state championship to Pine Grove this year. I would think it's probably the best chance we've had in a long time or ever, and we'll have for a lot more time. But Jason, speaking with them before this last game, said something that I thought had all the wisdom of Rocky and everyone else in it. And he told them that no matter how good they are as a team, they can never be perfect individuals. You're going to miss a ball. You're going to, make a mistake. You're going to cause a foul. You're going to not hustle at some moment. Something individually is going to go wrong in every game. You will not play a perfect game as an individual. But as a team working together, they have remained perfect. They have had a perfect season so far because they're able to pick up where one lets down. Or they're able to pick each other up. Or when one is not playing where they should be, the others are doing extra, and that keeps them as a perfect team in a way. And in many ways I find that true, and I wonder so often about the disciples and how they were human just like us. There was nothing divine about them more than being God's children like us. Jesus was perfect, but he left us, and he left them to do his work and to spread his church, though they were imperfect. But he left them to work together, though they would argue like we do sometimes as a church family or as a community, or disagree, but yet their work would still carry on the work of the body of Christ and be somehow in the end God's perfect will, which we don't know yet. I don't get that. I don't understand how it works, but I know that it does because I not only can read about it in Scripture, I see it in a soccer team. I see it in kids working together to sing a song. I see it in a painting on the back of our church. I see it when a group comes together to meet to talk about issues in their life, and each of them has made mistakes, yet what is shared between them is this perfect love and acceptance of each other. I see it when we talk about our friends who have passed, and we see the big picture of their life and realize the good that they left us with that maybe we didn't realize while they were here. So the title today is called Essayons. I would be surprised if many of you have ever used or heard that word before. It's a Latin word, and in my life it's taken on several different meanings. If you happen to serve in the military and were around Corps of Engineers people, it's the motto of the Army Corps of Engineers. And I think also the French military has used it as well. It means in Latin, best translated, it means let us try. But as I've talked about many times before, I went to a military school, Norwich University, and to me it's the greatest school in the country and always will be. Just like the Red Sox are the best team and always will be and all those things. But we're not perfect individuals. We definitely are not perfect individuals. But together as a community, Norwich has done so many things and still continues to in our country because we have this common goal and practice together. So it means let us try, but somewhere along the lines, because it's not exactly a school for rocket scientists, as you can tell since they let me in, we changed it to I will try. So that was the school motto for a little while. And then I think it's now back to just purely Essayons, but you still I will try on people's tattoos and t-shirts and things. And we don't really use it correctly, but it's taken on its own meaning. If you've ever seen the stickers or the t-shirts that say keep calm and carry on, or keep calm and whatever, for us it's kind of like that. If we don't know what else to say and we just say to each other Essayons, we know what that means. And it pretty much means to suck it up and keep going on, or to be persistent in life. We had to say that to each other a lot this week, this past week and a half, in losing 2 members of our community and in catching up. Many of you know I went down Friday to the funeral, like I mentioned, and it was a weird feeling to sit there with people I hadn't seen in a long time and be so happy to see them, and to be around people that I feel truly understand me or that part of my life, and yet to be so sad to see children say goodbye to their father and a loving wife say goodbye, and soldiers who had served under my friend Toma talk about what a hero he was. I mean, he truly was, not just in combat, but in other ways as well, and what a leader he was. And then to hear of all the other things friends of mine have been doing, everything from working for the Secret Service to other things in the military where they tend to say, well, I work for logistics, and you know they're not working for logistics. Those types of things. They're all out there doing great things, but yet when we come together, we're all one, and none of us is above the other. What amazed me about Toma to the end was he had pancreatic cancer, and that's not a good one to have. There's no good cancer to have, but from my understanding, that's one of the worst. And Toma, to the very end, kept his faith and his belief in God, while other people were falling apart or maybe losing faith or not understanding God. Somehow Toma understood God to the very end. So when I got together with these people, I realized how much, in a sense, although not everybody from Norwich or even that I was meeting with shares the same faith or belief in anything, but when I looked around the room the other night, I realized that we were really just a band of misfits, in a sense. Some of us can't believe that we've gotten to where we were, or others, because obviously the government doesn't do very good background checks if they knew what we had done in college, and now you're on security details for diplomats and government officials. But someone somewhere along the way saw the qualities in those men and women that I see as well, and knew they would do their job. But we've all had our ups and downs, we all have our imperfections, but somehow as alumni and even here as Christians, we're still getting the job done that we're called to do, no matter what our mistakes are, because we balance each other out and we still work together. And we're persistent, like the soccer team or like the disciples. And I thought of the disciples, how they weren't chosen because they were A students in school, because if they were the best Hebrew students or Jewish kids in the neighborhood, they would have been rabbis. But they weren't. They were fishermen. And that's who Jesus told. Some of them were fishermen. Jesus himself was trained as a carpenter as well. And that's who God chose and the skills he gave to teach us the ways that we are to love one another. Not those who we tend to want to hold up, but those who society would have looked to as less than the teachers that they had selected. I thought of a quote that reinforces this as well, and it reads, "Alone we aren't perfect. We will make mistakes, and we need to get back up every time we do. And when we see someone who cannot get back up, we need to get down with them, down on their level where they are, and to help them get up. Not to grab them and pull them by the collar and yank them up. Not to point a finger and blame them for where they were, but to be on their level where they are is the only way to truly support them on their way up and to keep them from falling again." At Norwich, we had a lot of experience in this time frame we call rookdom. It's like our basic training and goes from 12 to 14 weeks. Some of the most humiliating experience of my life occurred during that time, and also some of the most rewarding. And one of the tactics they would do when you messed up sometimes, and there's worse things that happen that I'm going to describe right now, but this is probably one of the most humiliating things, is if you were to mess up really big time and just be constantly messing up, well, somebody has to pay for that, you know. So what they would do is make that individual sit on a trash can in the hallway while everyone else got punished. We called it a smoke session. Now, I know that that's not fair. I know it's not professional. We all know those things. I'm just sharing it to tell you that as an individual, when you see other people paying for your mistakes, that's one of the most humiliating things you can experience in life. But after you do that a few times, and after other people do it, we start to have common ground and realizing that we've all made mistakes. And that we all will help pay for that and still carry that person through. I remember a few fellow rooks of mine who sat on that trash can several times and caused us a lot of strife. And yet if I saw them today, I would still treat them as a brother or sister of mine. The most rewarding experiences during Rookdom, though, were those times where we came together and did something not as individuals, but as a unit. I believe that as our church, we experience the same things. People say things to me all the time, being the pastor, about what a good job St. Peter's is doing and how they like to see the changes we've made. And it feels good, but it doesn't feel good if I didn't recognize and say that it's not just me. That it's all of us working together as a community and all of us working together towards what God calls us to do. That this isn't about any one individual or ideas of someone, but the willingness of everyone else to get behind those ideas. My main goal here and even in the community